Good morning, friends. It is Thursday, March the 26th. I'm telling you, these days are hard to keep track of. But we are going to finish out the chapter 3 today. A couple of housekeeping things. I've heard from everybody, so awesome. Thank you. We will continue on through the semester, and this is going to be great. I did upload a video just talking about the rest of the semester going online and also talking about academic dishonesty. So make sure I posted an announcement with the link to that video. So just kind of an update for there so you can watch that. It's just like 3 minutes long. So, okay. So also today we are going to attempt our first WebAssign quiz. Okay. And what I'm going to do instead of doing directions on this video is I'm going to make a second video that talks about how to walk you through WebAssign and get to your quiz. So make sure you look for that. And make sure, again, you're up on WebAssign. If you're getting a note that says your grace period has ended, make sure you hit the yellow rectangle on the left-hand side that says Start Trial, and you should be good to go. So, okay, so on Tuesday we talked about inverse trig functions, and with those inverse trig functions we were able to find angles. Remember, inverses give you angles, regular trig functions give you coordinates. So what we want to do today is we want to solve trig equations. So we actually want to get out that theta or that x value that's there. So think about section 3.1 to 3.4. These were identities that we did. So identities are equations that are true for all variables that you put in. So it doesn't matter what angle you put in, it's always true. So what we want to look at today is conditional equations. So conditional equations are true for only some values, not all of them. So this is like solving a linear equation in college algebra. X equals 5. 5 is the only thing that makes it a true statement. So to solve trig functions, they're very similar to algebraic. Okay, so we're going to isolate our variable or our trig function on one side, everything else on the other side. And what we're going to use to get our variable out are the composite inverse trig functions that we learned about in the last section, 3.5, and I've listed them below. So once you take the inverse of a trig function, you get out that angle, and that's what we're going to use to do that. Okay, you can write your solutions in two ways. So the first one is a general solution, and the k plus 360 on the end accounts for every revolution around the circle. So as it goes around, it hits all those coterminal angles. So that accounts, that's our general solution. What we're going to focus in more is just the solution that happens between 0 and 2 pi. So this is what we will use. The restricted domain is not into play here. So we have to find all the places that this is happening. So it's different than what we did in the last section. In the last section, we just used the restricted domain. But when you're solving, you always use the restricted domain. So this is where, if you are using your calculator to find these, you've got to find the other places that this is happening because your calculator only gives you the restricted domain. Okay, so for the first example, let me get it all in here. So sine x minus 1 equals 0. So you want to isolate your trig function on one side. Take the inverse of both sides, and that's what's there in the orange. It kind of looks red. Take the inverse of both sides, and when you take the inverse sine of sine x, you just get the x out. And then you want to ask yourself, at what angle is the sine 1/2? So remember, we know that that's happening where a sine positive, it's the y, so it's happening at 30 and it's happening at 150. And so both of those are solutions. We don't just use the restricted domain. Both are the solutions. Okay, the next one. Again, isolate your trig function on one side. So subtract root 3 and divide by 2. Take the inverse cosine of both sides. And then at what angle is the cosine negative root 3 over 2? So where is cosine negative? Remember, cosine is our x-axis. So where is x negative? So that's where the 150 and the 210. We know the cosine of root 3 over 2 happens at a 30-degree reference angle. So that's where the 150 and the 210 are coming from. 30-degree reference angle in quadrant number 2 and quadrant number 3. Okay, and the next one, subtract 1 from both sides, take the inverse cosine of both sides. You get your x out. At what angle is the cosine negative 1? So this was only happening in one place and just 180 degrees. Now, this one is one that is not a special angle, so this is one where we will use our calculators. Make sure your calculators are in degrees because that's what we want our solution to come out as. So again, isolate your trig function on one side, everything else on the other side. When you take the inverse cosine of 3 over 5 in your calculator. So I kind of put some buttons over here. So push your second button on your calculator, then your cosine button, and then 3 divided by 5, and then enter. And that should get you 53.13 degrees. Now, again, your calculator only gives you your restricted domain. So that means that we've got to find both places. So we want to know where is cosine positive. It's positive in the first and the fourth quadrant. So we have a 53.13 degree angle in the first quadrant and the fourth quadrant. So to find the one in the fourth quadrant, you want to subtract from 360, and that's where the 306.87 is coming from. So you have those two spots. Okay, the next one, again, get tangent on one side. And again, we're taking the inverse tangent of root 3 over 3. We unrationalized that on Tuesday in section 3.5. So that's where you've got to get it down to sine and cosine. So it can either be at the 30 or it can be at the 30-degree reference angle in the third quadrant because they're both negative or they're both positive. So that's where the 30 is coming in and the 210. Because that's what creates a positive. If you were to create tangent from those 2 points, you would get a positive root 3 over 3. Okay, the next one. Now, this breaks up new ones. So the ones we've already done have just had one trig function going on. So if you have more than one trig function, you want to take everything to one side and factor. Now, do not cancel off trig functions, and the reason for that is because you will lose solutions. Excuse me. You'll lose solutions that way. So you have to take everything to one side and then factor. So the first one, we have it set equal to 0. So we want to factor it. So we want to factor out a sine x, and that leaves me with sine x minus 1. And then I want to set each piece equal to 0. So this is a lot like if you're solving quadratics in college algebra. Factor and then set each piece equal to 0, and then solve independently. So solve the sine x equal to 0 and solve the sine x minus 1 equal to 0. So take the inverse of both sides. Where is sine 0? So that's happening at 0 and 180. Where is sine 1? That's happening at 90. So again, it is absolutely vital that you know your special angles. Again, I can't say that enough. Okay, the next one, again, we want to factor. So so move everything to one side and set it equal to 0. So I get the 4x squared, or 4 sine x. Let me start again. I get 4 sine squared x minus sine x minus 3 equal to 0. So I need to factor that. So over on the right-hand side, I took the sine out and just did it in terms of x. So that's where the 4x squared minus x minus 3 is coming from. So you can factor that just in terms of x and then put your sine x back in, and that may be helpful for you. So once it's factored, then you want to set each piece equal to 0. So 4 sine x plus 3, this is one where you're going to have to use your calculator for. And again, when you do the inverse sine of negative 3/4, your calculator is going to give you negative 48.59. And remember, if I get a negative angle, that means I'm measuring clockwise from the x-axis. So that to find what that positive angle is, you subtract from 360. So that's where the 311.41 degrees is coming from. Now, to find the other one, you have to ask yourself, where is sine negative? So sine is our y value, so it's happening in the third and fourth quadrant. So I also need an angle that's happening in the third quadrant. And to be able to find that angle, I want to take 180 plus 48.59. The 48.59 degrees is basically acting as a reference angle. And then sine x minus 1, we did that one above, so it's equal to 90. Okay, the last one, and again, this one's a little bit different. If you'll notice inside of the trig function, instead of just an x or a theta, it actually has 2x. So you don't want to evaluate that 2x inside until the end. So just hold on to it. It just acts like a theta. So first of all, divide by 2 on the outside. So you get cosecant 2x is equal to 9/2. Now rewrite that in terms of sine and cosine. So cosecant is 1 over sine. So I have 1 over the sine of 2x is equal to 9/2. Because I have two fractions, I can flip both, and that means that I can get that sine 2x on top. So I have sine 2x is equal to 2/9. Take the inverse sine of both sides. We have to use our calculator again. So when you put the inverse sine of 2/9 into your calculator, you should get 12.84 degrees. Now that is 2x is equal to 12.84 degrees. Okay. Now again, we have to find the other spot. So where is sine positive? It's happening in the first and the second quadrant. So we have to find our angle in the second quadrant by subtracting from 180. So 180 minus 12.84. So that's the one that gives us the 167.16 degrees. Now again, these are both equal to 2x. So to just solve for x, we then want to divide both of these degrees by 2. Okay, and there is some homework that you can look at. Also, what we will be doing is a WebAssign quiz. WebAssign quiz. So make sure to look for the next video that shows you exactly how to log into your WebAssign quiz. And if you have any questions, I'm also posting, so this is the end of the chapter. So that means that we're going to get to take a test on WebAssign, which is new for all of us. So just everybody breathe. So I'm also going to post a review on Blackboard. So it'll be a paper copy review. I will post it in today's daily assignments. So go ahead and start working on the review. Next Tuesday, we will answer questions over the review, and I'll kind of talk you through how to take the test on Thursday, and we will go from there. So yeah, if you have any questions, be sure to reach out an email or give me a phone call. But otherwise, I'm guessing you guys are doing okay. So wash your hands and stay inside. So look for the next video over the WebAssign quiz.